morning. As you may or may not know, Donnie had to travel out of state this week for a funeral, and he's on his way back, but he just couldn't make it in time this morning. And he mentioned it last week, so I had a little bit of time to prepare, kind of had some thoughts together, and he sent me a message on, I think it was Wednesday, saying, "You're up." So here I am. And we wish that he and Karen have a safe trip home. Go this way, he says. Okay, got to get the clicker worked out. And I'm on TV today. Chelsea promised she'd make me look good. So go ahead and drop like 40, 50 pounds right off the front too, Chelsea. I'd appreciate that. But we're glad you're here. Glad you're here worshiping with us in the room. We're glad you're here worshiping with us at home. I know that Dorothy Orr told me on a telephone call earlier this weekend that she was planning to head to the nursing home and enjoy the service with Don from his room there. So, hi, Don and Dorothy. Hope you're doing well. I did forget a couple of other announcements that I was supposed to make, and one of them concerns the small group that meets at Donnie's house. Alan and I also help coordinate that. To ease the pressure on Donnie and Karen, who are going to make it back in time for that small group, we're not going to meet at their house tonight. We're going to meet at Pizza Ranch at 6 o'clock. So come on over to Pizza Ranch at 6 o'clock and enjoy some social time together. That way they can just get back into town and be a little more relaxed, because I don't know about you, but I'd be worried about rushing back, getting the house clean, and and Karen's always got brownies in the oven and all kinds of good stuff, and we don't want them to have that added pressure. So we're going to gather together at Pizza Ranch at 6 o'clock tonight and do that together. And then I also forgot, it's always about food, right? Welcome to the Church of Christ. Next Sunday, basket dinner. Please bring an item to share, and if you can. If you can't, that's okay too. All are invited to come and stay after the service and enjoy a meal together. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about fear and its motivating factors and how that can be helpful to us as Christians. I'll get this thing figured out yet. Some of you may know, because I've spoken on it before, but this is the first verse that I ever bothered to memorize. I was 14. I was at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes retreat, and this one I committed to memory. And it's really easy for me to remember it, but it is not so easy for me to do it. So I get help. I am like one of the millions of Americans who takes an anti-anxiety medication every day. And we started out with 10 and then went to 20, and now we're at 30. So I take one of those whole tablets every day. That's mine. That's Boost Bar. Nothing fancy about it really, but it helps me to stay on more of an even keel. And I'm a fairly high-strung individual. Anybody who knows me knows that. I'm very intense. I'm a type A personality. I'm a perfectionist. I have an overwhelming need to be correct, and that means I want to be in control of everything. So that gives me a lot of anxiety and fear when I'm not in control, when I'm not in charge. And so this helps, and it helps a lot of people. I wish I didn't need it, but I do, and that's okay. I'm not embarrassed about it or ashamed to admit. It helps me every single day. You know what? I take Advil when I have a headache. I take this stuff to just be somewhat of a nicer guy who's a little more pleasurable to be around. Some of you are thinking, okay, go ahead and double your dose, Jamie. We'd appreciate that. Probably not a bad idea. But we've been working on a study on Wednesday nights that's been very convicting to me, so I lifted at least the beginnings of ideas of this message today from that. And one of the questions we had a few weeks ago was, are you a worrier by nature? Or are you the opposite? You just kind of take it as it comes, whatever, laid back. I'm definitely in the first category. I'm a worrier by nature. I wish I was in the second category. And both of those things can be strengths or weaknesses, right? And so we talked in that class about worrying, fretting, what types of worry are good, when is it good to be concerned, right? And we don't just throw caution to the wind, right? We have to be smart. So when the weather forecast says it's going to be 25 degrees below zero, we don't put on shorts and a t-shirt to go outside. Right, John? Right? Yeah. Okay? We take some precautions. But if we have to go outside, we have to go outside. We don't just avoid going outside. And so as I think back to be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you may go. Sometimes I take the approach of, okay, well, I guess now there's two of us here that are worried, right? God's with me. Great, I've got a companion on this road of worry and distress. But that's not at all what he meant. So as we talked in our class, we start thinking about, well, what good does worry get us? How does your fear of circumstances, consequences, or possibilities limit your choices in life? Are you missing out on any hopes and dreams because of your fear? Right? And that can be as simple as something like, I remember a trip to Mexico a few years ago with my family. We were on a vacation, and we were in Mexico, and they have these, freshwater holes throughout the jungle. And we went and visited one of them, and they have this platform you can jump off of, right? And 3 feet, 5 feet, 20 feet, and 50 feet were the choices. Well, I went 20. I went up to 50 and looked, but I didn't jump. All right, now I know if you just land feet first and go right in, you'll be fine. But at 20 feet, I had my arms out, slapped my arm flab, and that turned red. That was not fun, so I figured that would hurt at least twice as much from 50 feet, so I didn't jump. But the 20-foot thrilling, right? I liked roller coasters when I was younger. My back and my neck don't like them as much anymore, but it's not an emotional thing. It's a thing that I don't want to be sore in the car for the next 3 days, so I don't do the tornado anymore at Adventureland. I did go once when I was 14 and it had rained, and we rode it like 15 times in a row because nobody else was in line. I'm pretty sure that would kill me now. So I don't do that anymore. So fear can keep us from doing simple stuff like that. It can keep us from taking a job. I can tell you that about a year ago, almost next week it'll have been a year, I started a new job. And as I was preparing to put in information for that new job, I looked at my resume. And I debated long and hard on my resume, where I have a bunch of different activities and things that I do. Do I list the fact that I'm a member of this church, or that I'm in the leadership group for this church, or not? Because I was thinking, well, I don't know, will these people even want to know that? Can that possibly keep me from getting the job? I listed it, I got the job, and then at this job for the insurance company, we have a large cafeteria area. That's not hot food, but a large dining space. I mean, big, 4 times as big as this room. And everybody comes downstairs between 11:30 and noon and eats lunch together. All of the lawyers in the department grab their brown bags and go downstairs and eat. The president of the company, multi-billion-dollar life insurance company, brings his brown bag and comes downstairs and sits with random people at tables and eats lunch every day. Well, I eat lunch with them, and I mentioned a few weeks ago in our Wednesday night class that one of the things I was worried about was saying a prayer before I eat in front of all these people that I just met, just got to know. What will they do? What will they think of me? Will they say anything? I was afraid. I was afraid of the outcome of what someone might think of me for saying a prayer over a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a yogurt, or a lean cuisine or whatever it was I had that particular day. And so I started to go down early, be the first one in so I could already have it done before they got there. All right, so I was the first one out of the office to head downstairs, so from the 4th floor to the 1st floor. And over time, I cared less and less about what they were going to say or do, so I just started doing it. So I stop, and I say a little prayer before my lunch, even if the rest of the people at my table are still talking. I have invited them to join me once. 1 did, 3 didn't. What's odd about that is that they all go to church, and all of their kids go to Christian schools. But not all of them wanted to join me for a prayer before a meal. So I pray silently, I make that example. But that was a lot of fear and anxiety that I had about something that now seems silly, but back then seemed really important. I wanted a job, wanted to make friends, wanted to keep the job, wanted to impress my boss. And I was worried about whether my boss would like me or not. Luke chapter 12. There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after your body has been killed, has an authority to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. We talked about this in our Wednesday night small group a little bit in the last week. And I don't say it to be flippant, but at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen to any of us is we die. And we've been doing this series with Andy Stanley, and you'll notice in a little bit I cribbed some style for him because he's really just, I'm getting into him. He's speaking to me in a way that I really like. But, he made the point last week, well, we're all going to die anyway. We're going to lose everything that we have, right? And God knows everything that we've done, everything that we've said. It's all going to come into the light. It's all going to be made known. So what are we really afraid of? So I thought about this verse and, the word fear. We think it's a negative emotion, right? It's not good to be afraid. But evolutionary biologists will tell us, well, that's what, kept us from getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers or dinosaurs or whatever it was that was going to eat us when we were not quite people, right? Fear can be helpful. It keeps us safe. But we don't like to be afraid, right? So we have this negative understanding of fear. So I'm substituted. But I will show you whom you should trust. Trust him who, after your body has been killed, has authority to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, trust him. Well, trust I like. Trust is a good word. I want to be trustworthy. I want to give trust to others. So if you think about fearing God as respecting him, trusting in him, then it's not so scary, it's not so bad. But fear is easy. Fear comes natural. Trust is hard. Trust does not come naturally, right? How many of you have been told by someone, trust is earned, right? Got to earn the trust. How many of you think it's just given, right? And then somewhere in between. Trust is hard. Trusting God, giving it up to God, harder still. Sometimes it's easier to trust my car than God. Trust my spouse. Trust that the refrigerator is going to have good food in it when I open it up. That's easier sometimes than giving it up to God. So how do we trust God? Well, lots of little fun phrases. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Trust begins the same way. You just kind of got to start. You just got to do it. You got to take that first step, and then that second step down the journey. You got to take the first bite. How do you like your elephant? Medium rare, probably. I don't know. You got to take that first bite. Start at the trunk, start at the tail, whichever way you go. In the end, you'll get it all done. Trust begins the same way. So let's think about Matthew chapter 14, a story that we all know really well. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And the disciples said, "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." That's it. They didn't mention any butter or jelly, no mustard sauce for the fish or anything like that. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Not a lot. "Bring them here to me," he said, and he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the bread. So he performed a little trick. He took 5 loaves of bread and turned them into 10, right? Cut them in half. It's simple math. Trust me, guys. We got we got 5 now. We got 10. Don't you think? I mean, I remember when we were really little, we'd gone to a water park for the weekend, and my youngest brother was 5, and he discovered that when he put a quarter into the candy machine and hit the change button, he got 5 nickels back. So he went around to every adult that was at the group with us that weekend to get as many quarters as he could, and he had this massive stash of nickels under his pillow, and he thought he had made money. He was rich. He wasn't. He had the same. So still, we break the bread into 2, each loaf into 2 or 3 or 4. Still, just 5 loaves and 2 fish. Right? That wasn't magic. And then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. And where I'm cribbing from Andy Stanley a little bit is, I like the way he reads the Bible because he starts to fill in the human piece on the outside. That's a very straightforward statement. Jesus took the bread, the fish, he gave thanks, he broke the bread, he gave it to the disciples, and he said, give it to the people, and they all ate and they were satisfied. My guess is the disciples were looking at the basket and the bread and the fish, and they're going, you sure, boss? Really? I mean, I think we're going to get to about person number 4 there, and we're going to be out of food. And then everyone else is just going to get an empty basket. Are you sure? I'm sure that at least 1 or 2 of them thought that. They thought he might be crazy. Because we know throughout the Bible there are plenty of instances where the disciples are still men. They're still people. They doubt. Their faith wavers. They lose focus. And I got to believe this was one of those times. Because if you recall the rest of the story, Jesus fed 5,000, right? But in biblical times, we'd only record the 5,000 men who were present. So all of the women and children at that time weren't counted. Today we count you. I'm glad you're here. But they didn't. So it was probably closer to 15 or 20,000 people that he actually fed, because the women and children got to eat too. They all ate and were satisfied. That means even Jesus and the disciples. There wasn't enough bread and fish to feed those 13 people, but they all ate. Because the disciples, they did what they were told, and they had a basket, and they passed it out. And in the end, they got 12 baskets of bits and pieces back. There was so much food. They didn't really have a reason to understand or know other than Jesus was God. They got an instruction that sounded crazy. Take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and give it to this crowd of 15 or 20,000 people, and everybody will eat and they'll all be full. They all ate and they were all satisfied. That's the kind of stuff that God is asking us to do every day. Your faith can begin when your fear ends. Or put another way, faith begins when trust begins. So don't worry about the fear piece, worry about the trust piece. If fear is what motivates you, take that first step. Take a step in trust. Take a step in faith. 1 step. So release your fear a little bit. Pray before the meal in public. We're going to go to Pizza Ranch tonight. I'm confident there'll be a prayer because we're going to gather a bunch of Christians from this church together, and even the folks at Pizza Ranch are Christian, so there could be no issue there. But the next time you're at McDonald's or you're at Duck City Bistro, you say a prayer before you eat the meal. Now, I don't know about timing, because I'm always like, well, the bread's here. Can I eat the bread before I pray? I don't know. Or the salad. Maybe it's before the main event. Leave that up to you, but pick the spot and pray. You might surprise yourself that the meal tastes just a little bit better. Maybe it won't. But you know that you've done the right thing for God. Pass the basket of fish and bread, even if you don't think it's going to work. We've been talking for 2 years now about inviting people to come join you at church And Donnie has told us many times it takes, 7, 8, 9, 10 invitations before somebody actually accepts. Be one of those invitations. Just trust that it will work. Invite that person to join you to church on Sunday, to Pizza Ranch tonight. How hard is Pizza Ranch? I mean, there's a game room. Get them to come for the games and the pepperoni. Maybe they'll have fun hanging out with some Christians and notice that there's no cursing. And, we don't have a TV going with improper influential movies and things like that. Just trust Jesus. He knows all. All has been revealed to him. And he loves us anyway. He died for us anyway. He knew when he died that you were going to be born and that you were going to do things that didn't meet his expectation. And you've done some. I have. He did it anyway. So just give him a little bit of trust. Just a little bit. That's all he's asking for, is to take that first step. To love the Lord, to fear the Lord, to trust the Lord. That's all we have to do. And as we do that, others may see us, others may join us, and we will be one step closer on that journey of 1,000 miles to Christ. Please pray with me. Our loving Father, you sent your Son Jesus to this earth to live among us, to teach us, and ultimately to die for us and conquer death in his resurrection for the forgiveness of our sins. Each and every one of us knows this to be true, but still it's hard to trust that it's true. Open our hearts just a little bit. Help each person in here to take one more step, whether it's the first step or the 1,000th or the 1,000,000th. One more step towards knowing you, loving you, and trusting you. Because that's all it takes, is one little increment at a time. It's not a zero to hero type situation. We know that if we pray, if we seek you, and if we give you a little bit of trust, your plan will be revealed on earth. Amen. As we sing this final song here, in preparation for the final prayer, the elders are going to be up front and in the back. If you need to meet with them, if you'd like a little assistance, a little extra prayer or support from them, feel free to reach out to them. They're here to help us on our spiritual journey, to love us and support us.